Hello, welcome to Conscious Not Crazy with Kori Bloom. I'm going to let you take over from here.
So that's fun. So, yes, this is Kori with Conscious Not Crazy. I'm glad to be back. And as you can tell, I have a special guest here today. He's very shy. So, Aaron Stroman. And we met because he has a podcast, The Intentional Father. Aaron has a lot of things that he does, though. He is a father. We'll start with that. He has teenagers just like me. He was a youth minister, which you told me for 17
Yep.
years. I don't know that I realized it was that long. So that's very cool. And then, yes, he started the podcast, The Intentional Father, and he currently works with his own father. We also have that in common. I worked with my father at one point, and they do consulting and work with nonprofit organizations. So I'm going to let Aaron share a little bit about why he's here, why we connected, his journey um, from, I guess, in fatherhood and why he started his podcast and kind of his mission and
Okay.
what he's passionate about. So yes, now that he's introduced us, welcome, Aaron.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'll start with my origin story, if that's
Okay.
okay, into the fatherhood realm. So, in youth ministry,
Okay.
I was working with teenagers, and like most stereotypical males, I have hero complex and was, like, oh, youth pastor, come in and save the day and help point teenagers in the right direction. And had a lot of great programming, some good life change, but the more I experienced working with teenagers and families, the more I saw the role of the family. I mean, it's hard to out pastor a bad family.
Yes.
And I go, okay, I need to start working with parents. I need to start studying families and began doing that. And then became a dad. And I was a way better expert at families before I was a dad than after. So yeah. So then it's like, oh, this is a little harder.
I'm really good with kids until
I'm
I have
such an
kids.
expert at kids. And then it became apparent, like, I know nothing.
We have so many common things on our journey because that is exactly I was working, I had kids and realized I didn't know what I was doing after a whole life of being a
Yeah.
teacher and working with kids, running camps. Then I had the luxury, I will say, of working at this really amazing small private school here where my kids went. And I learned so much about the development of children and what, like, basically, I never fault parents for doing the wrong thing. We all are intending to do our best in most cases, and we just are missing tools and
Yeah.
skills.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember seeing a kid have a meltdown. I thought, man, what a horrible parent. Why would you allow your kid to act like that? And they say things like, sorry, he's just tired. He skipped his nap. And I'm like, that's no excuse. And
Mhm.
then I have kids. And I'm like, oh, if you skip nap time, they have meltdowns. Okay,
Oh, they
maybe
need
I
sleep.
was wrong on that one. I need to
Have some
note to
grace.
self:
Some
no more
grace.
skipping nap time. Go to bed. And adults are kind of like that too. We get a little cranky if
We're
we don't get enough
hungry.
sleep. Yeah, the hangry thing's real. So anyway, so I become a father and realize, like, okay, things are a little bit different, but I really do think being a youth pastor helped me be a better father. I at least had some foundation to start on,
Mhm.
and was loving life, loving being a dad. And then when my kids are kind of later elementary age, I went through a divorce, lost half custody of my kids. So now it's 50-50. I'm only seeing them 7 days out of 14. And of course, that's heartbreaking. But I realized, okay, if I only have my kids half the time now, I got to be twice as intentional as I was before. And it's easy for parents just to kind of go with the flow in life with
Mhm.
how we parent. But when that's taken away from you, you have a decision. Do you keep going with the flow, or do you become intentional? And so that's where the idea of the intentional father came in. And so I started being very intentional, setting really good priorities and intention on how I parented my kids when I had them. And I'm convinced my children have got better parenting out of me half the time with full attention than what they got out of me when I had them full time, but maybe half of the intention.
And I would agree with that too. And part of that is probably when you're in a relationship that maybe, obviously, no one wants divorce. That's not the ideal. But also being divorced, I was able to parent a lot more effectively within the time, or I am able to parent more effectively because there was so much tension in the relationship. It was affecting
Yeah.
my parenting. That was a piece for me. I'm not saying that was the same for you, but that was a piece for me. But I think I love the intentional piece. And we were talking about this before, because I think oftentimes when parents go through divorce, they're so caught up with themselves, the kids get
Hmm.
lost in the mix. And I think to do the opposite, to put the kids at the center. And because really the goal, I will say I've been fortunate in my divorce. The one thing we always do, put the kids first. We do put the kids first. Our issues are our issues.
Right.
Let's not make that their issues. They didn't choose that.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's amazing. I also love the intentional father, because my podcast, Conscious Not Crazy, being intentional and being conscious are are very similar.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting, the parallel there.
Yeah. And the whole, intentionality is kind of weird because we do so many things, maybe intuitively or naturally, but it's
Hmm.
not intentional. And so to step back and ask everything, like evaluate everything we do, and why am I doing that? Am I doing it on purpose or not?
Hmm.
And just a story behind the word, my dad, when he was a child, tipped over a lamp and broke it. And his dad was kind of getting on to him, and my dad said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to."
Hmm.
And my grandpa asked him, "Well, did you mean not to?" And that's the thing. It's easy to bump into something and knock it over and go, "Oh, I didn't mean to." But if I'm intentional about, okay, I'm not going to bump this mic, then I'm probably not going to hit it.
Right.
Same thing with life, with parenting. We're going. Are we going with the flow? Like, oh, I didn't mean to, but did you mean not to? And that's what it means to be intentional. Is to let's take a look at everything and ask ourselves, okay, what am I doing with this time? And yet you kind of have to strip it all down and rebuild it, and then we can bring in some
Because
intentionality.
I think as human beings, we tend to blame circumstances for our lack, but we all have the same number of days in a year.
Yep.
We have the same number of hours in a day. And, I love fitness, and people look at me and they'll be like, well, I don't have time to do that. I'm like, you have to make the time.
Yeah.
So if it's important to you, if your kids are important to you, you have to intentionally make time. And yes, and it doesn't mean taking them, we were talking about this too, like to Disney World. Just look, they don't need things. They just need your presence. They need to know you're there. They need to know that you're listening to them. And phones don't help, because I know I'm guilty of
Hmm.
that too, being on that phone too much, because what we do matters too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I love, yeah, intention's huge. And I think I call it our CD-ROM. We tend to raise kids. We talked, how we were raised. And it's just we're on autopilot. So you have kids, there's no owner's manual, and you just default to how you were raised. And in my case, that wasn't working. I had a very strong-willed 4-year-old, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't working so well. And I was also, when I look back, he was so young and my expectations were too high.
Mm.
And the more I've learned about really becoming the best parent I could be was a journey on to becoming a better person myself, becoming self-aware, becoming intentional. Um, and yes, what we focus on, we can control.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and with kids communicating in that way, I always tell parents, parents will say, don't do that, stop doing that. The kids don't touch the lamp. It's the kids' brains don't process the don't part, they just hear lamp. So now
Hmm.
they're focused on the lamp, they're more likely to break the lamp. So be gentle with the lamp. You want to tell people, and this is all people, but kids especially, what do you want them to do? You want to focus on
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
want. Just like you said, focus on avoiding the lamp or whatever it
Yeah.
is, be intentional about that, because the psychology of the brain, that works. Saying no, stop, or don't, like lifeguards say walk, because if they say don't run, and some lifeguards might, that doesn't work. The kid just hears run.
Right.
So awesome. So tell us a little bit. I know the Intentional podcast has some laws. So tell
Oh yeah.
us.
Yeah. 17 laws of the intentional father. That's a framework, kind of going through my own journey of becoming a better father and then deciding how can I help other people do this, made the framework and try to take a very practical approach to how can I evaluate everything I do and make it better, not perfect.
One of the favorite things I like to say. It's actually on my magazine article over there.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, so it's a framework, and I think it's a really good starting point. And even if that's all you did, applied all 17 laws to your parenting, you would be in the top 99%.
Mhm.
I mean, you're going to be doing a good job, and I think it'd be a good indicator of success. You may not be perfect at it, but it's a way to become intentional.
I love it. Okay, so 17, some people
Yeah.
might hear that and be like, whoa, that sounds like a lot to remember.
Mhm.
They're all very valuable. I've read through them. If you had to pick two things for a father that's out there struggling to focus on, like where do they start? What
Mm.
would you pick? Which two
The
laws?
first law for sure is the law of the mirror, which is lead by example.
Love it.
And man, you have to, like, there's laws about uh, cash. How do we deal with our finance? We want to
Mhm.
teach our kids how to
Mhm.
handle money, but if we can't do it, there's no way we can teach our kids to do it. And even if we try, even if we teach them better principles than what we're practicing, kids can see through the double standard or the hypocrisy. So it has to start with us. So I mean, that's definitely got to be the number one. We, um, man, my kids and I, just the other day, we saw a teenager yelling at her parents, and I thought, man, I am not used to seeing that. And
Mhm.
I even asked, when's the last time we've yelled at each other? And the kids, and we don't yell, like,
Right.
and that's not that. Um, I mean, there's a way to express emotion.
Well, aggression begets aggression. So especially with like toddlers and small
Hmm.
kids, they are missing skills. They're learning and growing. They're supposed to make mistakes. So if they're screaming and crying because somebody took their toy, they just don't know how to articulate that emotion. They're frustrated. They're mad. They're not being bad. There's an underlying thing driving their behavior. So if we yell at them to be quiet, we are working against ourselves. We
Yeah.
are not modeling what we're expecting them to do. And it's very confusing. And I don't think we're ever intentional. Like it takes being super intentional to recognize that, and see that there's a better way.
Yeah. Well, and I saw it a lot when I was a youth pastor. I would spend a couple years with teenagers before meeting their parents, and
Hmm.
sometimes you kind of wonder about a kid, and like, man, he's kind of an odd duck.
Hmm.
Why is he like that? Then you meet the parents, you go, oh, now I understand.
Right. And it's
And
not to judge. Parents are never intentionally I never judge parents, educators for doing something that I don't agree with. It breaks my heart for the child because it's just it's a lack of tools. The child's missing skills, but the parent is also missing skills. And that
yeah,
is why I have this podcast.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, and there's a lot of bad parenting that have the intention's good, but the
Hmm.
practice is bad. And so we got to learn. You got to have a willing heart to look in the mirror, going back to
Hmm.
the law of the mirror, and go, okay, what about me do I need to change first before expecting a different outcome for my children? So definitely law of the mirrors, number one. And man, I don't know. There's so many good ones. I would say the law of love.
I'd say that's a
That
good
law
one.
says love is spelled Time, and it's the principle
Time.
is to prioritize family over work. Yeah, on one of my podcasts, a guy was like, well, he was talking about some people he worked with who uh, will use family time as a cop out for not working as much, for being
Hmm.
lazy. I haven't experienced that with the guys I'm working with. Usually guys that I know they're running my circles, they're sacrificing their family for the sake of career.
Hmm.
And I just think that's a foolish decision. I
Well, it's
get
like,
you want to be a provider, you want to make the
right,
money, you want to get the
right.
promotion, but you have a long time to do that
Hmm.
after the kids graduate.
Yeah.
But man, those from birth to 16 or
It's a
maybe
limited,
14,
yeah.
limited time, take advantage of it. You can make more money afterwards. You'll be able to hit your retirement, no problem. But prioritizing that time, I would say would be the second thing I would encourage parents to do.
I even think there's a place, and you can tell me what you think about this from the father's perspective, and you are in the, in the business world, you're a consultant too. Why does it have to be? I mean, obviously you go to work, you have to work with clients, but why not bring your kids in and make it not so separate? Have conversations with them of what your career looks like and have conversations about what I'm doing. I remember growing up and my dad worked in retail, and my parents were divorced, and my dad was often, God love him, he was late picking me up all the time, and I didn't know why. I mean, I knew he
Yeah.
was at work, but I didn't understand it. Well, later, fast forward, in my late 20s, I worked for him, and I saw firsthand what that looks like, because I was late everywhere I went, because a customer would walk in the door 5 minutes before close. He owns a furniture store, and same thing. I've got to help the customer. Then I have and it was so eye-opening for me to see, oh, this is why he was late. And yeah, he told me he was late because but I
Yeah.
didn't really understand it. I'm just like annoyed because I'm like, my dad's late. But it was so interesting to fast forward and experience it, and look back, and I'm like, it makes so much sense now. And I had the thought, like, gosh, I just wish I had known or really truly understood that. So I think there's a piece where, why does it have to be separate? Like this podcast, my son, I laugh, he owes me a podcast. We're going to do a podcast on education because he went to the non-traditional private school through 5th grade, and now he's in traditional Catholic. He went to middle school and high school. And I just want to talk to him about the differences, and I want to hear his perspective, and I want my audience to hear that too. So that's me bringing him in, and I have conversations all the time with my kids explaining what this looks like that I'm doing now, because it's modeling and teaching them things and teaching them to keep going even when you're told no. And yes, and I was also at a conference with a gentleman that owns a huge company. He was talking to a crowd of 700 people, and his kids were on stage. They were often on stage. And one of his kids comes up. He's mid like talking to all of these people. And it was like a moment. And I talked about this even on another one of my podcasts. His child tugged on his shirt. He stopped talking. It wasn't frustrated, leaned down. You could kind of hear the whispering conversation, but not what they were saying. And then he got back up and was like, oh, yeah, and talked about what his kid said. And then he goes, where was I? And I was sitting there going, wow, I don't know if I would have, like shooed my kid off or been like, can't you see what I'm doing? And been frustrated.
Yeah.
It was a moment where I had a look in the mirror moment of, that is not what that would have looked like for me. And it was somewhat life changing because I thought, wow, that's possible. This is a guy that runs a $500 million company, that his kids are clearly a part of that journey. And it was a moment. I don't know. So I don't know what your opinion on that is.
I'd say there's probably a balance to find there. You know, I think it's great to take kids along, take your kid to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let them in your world. I think that's really good for a multitude of reasons. Part of it will be understanding, okay, what does it mean when dad says he's working, when mom says she's working? Now I understand. At the same time, and maybe even opposite of that, this is where intentionality comes in. No one's forcing you to work a certain job, and if your job
is
interfering with your parenthood, I think you should make a change. And I say that now, that's the main reason I got out of youth ministry. Is I didn't get burned out, loved it, still love it. I volunteer for our local youth ministry, but the time demand of a youth pastor, you have to be around when kids aren't in school. That's also the same time demand of being a father, being around when your kids aren't in school. And so I made a career change, at the age of 40, which, isn't ideal.
You're so
professionally.
Old.
Well, but if you look at it, it's kind of late.
Professionally,
it's kind of late to make a career move. But I did that because I knew, okay, my actually COVID is what kicked it off. I was my kid's teaching coach. They did a year of online
Virtual.
school, and I was able to work from home most of that time. And I just realized, like, wow, this is precious time.
Mm-hmm.
I did get to do the PE class, but everything else, I'm just kind of looking over their work. But we were eating lunch together during the day. We're hanging out there, finishing their school early, and we're going on walks and jumping on a trampoline. And I thought, okay, I need to make a change here before they get too old. And so I made a career change, and there's a sacrifice there too.
Mm-hmm.
I went to commission-based work, and
Mm-hmm.
so there's a pay cut in essence for a long time. But I think it's okay to make those changes if we're looking at our career and going, oh, if work is getting in the way of your children, that may not be intentional, maybe accidental,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the diligence we have to do as fathers is to evaluate that and don't place blame, or don't give responsibility to the work or to the boss. Oh, they're scheduling me. This
Mm-hmm.
is the night shift I have to do. You
Don't
can
you
make
think
it. You
that's
can make a change.
do you think that's somewhat displacing their guilt they're feeling?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, maybe but some people just don't. They don't even consider
Think
the
that's the
option.
option. Well, and I
Like I have
hear,
friends that are in law enforcement, and they
yeah,
don't get to pick their schedule,
no.
but they do get to pick their career. And I'm like, if you have kids, you might want to make a change, and
Mm-hmm.
you can. And and that's where it's like, don't that's where it's like, well, I can explain to my kids why I'm gone all the time, but the kids don't. A good answer isn't going to resolve the family dynamic. They want
Right.
your presence.
Right. If
So
you're
don't give them
missing.
excuses, give them your presence. And if that takes a big life shift, I would say it's worth it. Other
Mm-hmm.
people might disagree,
Well, and
but
I think oftentimes people say, well, I can't do that because maybe they've built a lifestyle around what they're doing and they can't envision, to them, it's going backwards.
mhm.
But what I hear you saying and what I would agree with is there's nothing more valuable than the time with your kids.
Yeah, I'll go backwards financially to go forward relationally with my
Hmm.
children.
And I think we live in a
100%.
very materialistic world where people struggle with that.
Of
Um,
course. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's not an
it's
easy
not
decision,
easy.
but it's a good decision, and usually the best decisions are hard decisions.
And I love to say this, short term hard, long term easy, short term easy, long term hard.
Yeah.
So, and I do, it's like, you think like where people are in the hamster wheel of work. And of course, fathers have the pressure to provide. And that doesn't mean moms can't provide too. But historically that's been, men are built, they're the hunters and gatherers, and they're built, they're and it's in your DNA to be the provider,
Yeah.
to be the
Yeah.
protector of the family. And so it's so ingrained. I think it's hard. I think that does make it challenging. But part of that protector provider is for the emotional well-being and time with your kids, because
Yeah.
there's nothing more valuable. I agree with that. Okay, give us another one. So you said the mirror, love.
Yeah, love. And I'll say the law of vitamin E.
Okay,
Overdose your children with encouragement.
love
So the
it.
words that we use are very formational to
Mm-hmm.
our children. We get to shape our children with the words we use. A lot of time, guys are good at being critical.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that was good, but here's what you could do better. Guys are good at even correcting, uh, kind of snapping, being firm. But how are we encouraging our children? Even saying "I love you" to our children. I work with some young adults, and the number of guys that have said, "Man, my dad's never said I love you to me," or "I've only
Which
heard it
is
once."
crazy to
Crazy. They
me.
should hear it every day.
Yeah.
Love you. I love you. I love you. And that's using our words to speak that life into our children. And a lot of times, and I'm stereotyping guys because I
That's
know what
okay.
it's like to be one, but we have all these beautiful, wonderful feelings inside, but we don't express it outwards. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's easy for us to think, well, I feel love for them. Man, they're the most precious thing to me. I'd sacrifice my life for them. But do they know it? Have you told it to them?
Right.
Have you said,
Well, it's
have
no
you said
different.
it out loud? Say it out loud. Say those words. even write them down, giving letters. I take guys through a workshop where I teach them how to frame a letter and speak life using the written word to significant others, to their children. And it's life changing. And they just don't know how. But
Mhm.
man, once you start doing that, I mean, your kids need to hear you say, I love you.
Yeah. They need to feel safe. Kids will kids will be, I feel like, more challenging for parents when they feel really safe with them too. There's that. Like, they challenge us more because they know we're going to love them unconditionally.
Hmm.
But 100%, there's so many things when you talk, I'm just like, it makes me think of so many different things. But vulnerability in fatherhood, what do you think about that? Do you think men have a hard time being
Oh,
vulnerable?
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I see it as weakness, and I see
Yeah.
vulnerability
Yeah.
as a strength, and I
Yeah.
say that all the time.
Yeah. Even, I kind of wonder if that's why some men don't say I love you, because there's there's the opportunity of rejection
Mhm.
at that. What if my kids don't say it back?
Mhm.
And that's happened to me. Um, they may not say it back all the time,
No.
or there may be an experience not with parenting, but with, like, romantically. Maybe in eighth grade, I
Mhm.
told a girl I loved her, and she's like, "Well, I don't love you. Go away." And like, so now I'm scared to say those words because, yeah, that
Fear.
vulnerability factor
Fear.
is huge. But vulnerability leads to intimacy,
Mhm.
and that there has to be some sort of risk. And so, yeah, vulnerability is a real thing, but I don't know. I think
Well, and I
be
would
willing to risk
say
it.
and I would say the Bible says this, you can tell me if I'm right. God wants connection over compliance. The only thing, especially as our kids get into the teenage years, that we can rely on is being connected to them so they come to us when something hard happens.
Hmm.
And I just think, would I have gone to my parents, when I was their age? Probably not. I would have been fearful. I would have gotten in trouble. I don't want mine to think there's any, mistakes happen. We don't want to repeat them. The goal is to learn from the mistake, to not repeat it. Coaching them through, what decisions did you make that you think led you to that choice? Was that a good choice? Getting them to critically think and solve their problem, but not telling them they're bad and putting them in a box and creating limiting beliefs. Because you said that language matters, encouragement matters, because whatever we tell them, whether we think they can or they can't, we're right. Whatever we say will be. And that's the message we're sending them. If we say, and we're all guilty of it, we might have an extroverted child and an introverted child. Well, if in front of them, we say that constantly, what do you think is going to happen? One's going to be like,
Yep.
I'm an introvert.
Yep.
And then I have kids with two different
Hmm.
personalities. I try to be very careful on how I say that. Or they're just not athletic. They hear those things because you're saying them so freely, and to your friends, they're overhearing it. And if your kid's in their bedroom with the door closed and you think they're not listening, they're listening. I was the nosiest kid. I listened to everything that I could. I remember standing at the top of the stairs. Kids are very intuitive. Kids are nosy, and they're just curious. And we want to help shape them in a positive way. My
Yeah.
kids will be like, we're going to lose that game, maybe because they had lost
Mm.
a game. And I will tell them, I'm like, you will lose if you think that.
Yep.
If that's what you're telling yourself, you are not setting yourself up for success. Why do you think that? If you're worried about losing, what can you do about it? Too often we just get stuck on, that's just how I am. I'm just, I'm not book smart. I used to tell myself that because
Hmm.
I struggled with reading. And then I found out my son was dyslexic. And I'm like, oh, maybe that was it. It just never
Yeah.
diagnosed. And I found audiobooks, read hundreds of books now. So I'm not book smart. I just needed to hear the book or get the
Yeah.
information
Yeah.
differently in a different way. And so we all have gifts, and our kids have gifts, and it's helping them identify those. You're not bad at this, but you're really good at this. And how can we make this better? This skill or this thing that you want to do. And it's okay for them to be challenged. And we talk, failure is important. Kids are
Yeah.
not given enough opportunities in today's world to fail. And that's doing them a great disservice,
Hmm.
I think. And so it's also important as the parent, and you can tell me from the father's perspective, modeling that. Like, yeah, I tried this thing that was uncomfortable, it was hard, and it didn't go well, but I'm not going to quit. I'm going to, like you talked about riding the bike. Um, like you want, when the kid falls off the bike, the most important part,
Get back on.
yeah, get back on
Yeah.
that bike.
And it's hurt. And that's the scariest time to get back on. But and the beautiful thing about riding the bike is when kids are at that age, their brain is still being formed.
Mm-hmm.
And so making them get back on the bike, not only is it teaching them how to ride a bike, but it is wiring their brain to learn, okay, when I fail, I'm going to try again.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so much content out there that talks about the value of failing
Have you
and
read
moving forward.
the book Fail, Fail Again, Fail Better?
No.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Sounds like, yeah, but I mean, there's teaching our kids how to do that though. And then so as a 44-year-old currently, when I go out and do a jujitsu tournament and I get beat, I can look at him and go, well, I failed, I lost, but I'm going to continue training. I'm going to compete again and I'm going to keep going. And that kind of goes back to leading by example. But why can I do that? Well, probably because my dad made me get back on the bike when I was learning how to ride, and
it is a part of the brain.
Get back on and go.
I don't remember the part of the brain, the name of it, but there's a part of your brain that actually grows every time you do something you don't want to do. And obviously, when we fall off the bike, the last thing we want to do, per your point, is get back on. When we do anything we don't want to do, I get up at 4 or 5 a.m. to go work out. I don't ever want to get up at 4 or 5 a.m., but if I want to get my workout in, that's when I got to do it.
Yeah.
But what gets me out of bed is I've done it so long, I think about what I feel like when I'm done. I'm motivated, not even by the workout. And there's no time to dread it when you're getting up at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So my kids did martial arts too. And at the time, the owner of the studio was like, you should do it with them. And I was like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I ended up doing it. And I thought, gosh, if I'm expecting my kids to get up there, and I was uncomfortable because there weren't many adults that did it. We had to go do testing with the kids. So all these adults are watching all these kids, and there's maybe like 3 adults. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. But the more I did it, the less uncomfortable it was. And I realized how good it was for my kids to see me doing it with them. Yeah. So it was invaluable. Yeah. Because how can I ask them to do something I'm not willing to do myself? So yeah, that mirror, that modeling is so important. I love it. Okay. So what do you think as a whole is the biggest challenge for fathers, and maybe like what's one piece of advice for somebody that's struggling out? What's the one struggling out there? What's the one place you would direct them?
I'd say first, just realizing your influence over your child's life. Even if kids don't say it with their words, children want meaningful relationships with their parents. And there's a special relationship with dad that kids can't get with mom.
Yep.
And so not trying to leverage that, but just seeing it.
We provide different things.
Of saying, okay, I do matter in this family. I think it's easy for dads to feel like their role isn't as important, especially at the beginning of life when mom is feeding the child. She's birthed the child. It's kind of like, well, what do I do here? You keep bringing home money. It's like, well, there's more than you can do than that, and that's important. You got to be a provider, but building the relationship. And then really, probably the toughest part is just questioning, why am I doing the things I'm doing? Being able to identify, okay, that's probably a lot of it's how I was raised. Some of it's because that's what I've seen modeled for me, maybe somewhere else. And then evaluating it and going, what's the best thing for my family? And then making the appropriate changes to up the father game. And I think just that evaluation, being able to look back and go, okay, put everything on the table. Let's keep what's good, get rid of what's bad, and replace it with something better. I think that would be
and I think that's a good thing to do periodically. Because needs of the family evolve and change over time. I mean, the needs are the same, but it changes slightly, with as your kids get older. Because like the need when you have an infant is different than the need when you have a teenager. But so self-awareness. I hear you saying self-awareness, really dialing in on what do you value, and maybe removing what you don't. And with that comes more clarity and less confusion, I
Yeah.
would say. Awesome. Okay, so if a father out there would like to work with you, what's the best way to find you or reach out to you? And I will put all of this information in the show notes. So if you're driving and listening to this, you do not need to write it down.
Yeah. I would say just email me it's Aaron@stromanconsulting.com.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Aaron. I
You're welcome.
appreciate your time and
Yeah.
it was
Thank
great
you.
connecting with you.